dream. I was flying high, I was feeling fine. I won't be put in line, 'cause I'm ready to do my time.
Simply Financial with Christopher Calandra, Certified Financial Planner, is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to this episode of the Simply Financial Podcast. We're in season number 3. This is episode number 21. And hopefully you've been listening the last couple of weeks. We are doing a 5-part series, Battle of the Sexes. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. In the first 2 episodes of the 5-part series, I had on my wife, Joelle, and we talked about money in marriage and covered a wide-ranging discussion related to money inside of a relationship. And for the 3rd installment, I have with me Lindy Brock, who is in Connecticut, in studio, traveled from Florida. We're doing a big client event tonight, so we thought we would get her thoughts and just kick around some ideas about money in marriage. So, thanks, Lindy.
I'm excited to be here with you again.
So I want to pepper you with some questions. There's some things I think I know about you and your husband, DJ.
You think?
I think, but we'll find out. And then maybe you could ask me some questions. Hopefully this will go as well as I think it will. Let me kick it off by asking you, how much cash do you typically carry around?
Not much at all. We're horrible, me and my husband both, at putting money in our wallets. The only reason that I tend to carry cash is if my kids are going to need something for school or, I don't know, just something that they go to with their friends.
So you traveled from Florida to Connecticut, got on a plane. We picked you up at the airport. We've been bouncing around Connecticut doing meetings and such this week. How much cash did you bring with you?
$25.
Wow. Okay.
And I was lucky to have that on me. And it was just because my kids have given me some money to hold on to for them, and then I credit their allowance accounts. So.
Okay. We're going to come back to allowance in a future episode with the kids. But do you do research before making major purchases?
We do. We tend to. My husband is much better at that than I am. He is a researchaholic, and Google is his best friend. He talks to people. He Googles things. He spends hours of research. We had just got the grill.
Right.
So we did this pellet grill, and we had been kicking around this idea for a couple months, and it took us a couple months to make that decision. Because he had to talk to people, and he had to do the research and read the reviews and watch videos on it. I mean,
Okay.
I rely on him heavily for that.
So is there a point where you say, hey, it's decision time, or do you buy into the process? And I think he sort of enjoys it too, right? Mm-hmm. Digging into that kind of thing. But is there ever a time when you're like, all right, listen, time out, it's decision time? Does that happen occasionally? Or you let it just run through?
I usually just let it run through the process.
Okay.
It only really, if it comes down to, okay, now we need this.
Right.
If it's not a want, if it's a need, then obviously we have to make a decision quicker.
And are you happy with the decision with the grill?
I am. It's a wonderful grill.
And he's even happier, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Awesome. Now, are you a spender or a saver?
I think other people would classify me as a saver, but I don't think that I save enough. I think I go more towards the spending, but I think I'm a happy medium.
Okay. And how would you describe DJ?
He's a saver. Yes. A lot of his buddies tease him because they say that he's cheap. He doesn't want to, spend money on anything, but he is very willing to make purchases. He just wants to make good purchases that are very well thought out.
So he's not an impulse buyer?
No.
Especially with things that have bigger ticket items?
Yes.
Because he's going to do that research?
Yes.
And deliberate about it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I'm more of the impulse buyer, and that's why we get along very well, because I need that balance in my life.
So Joelle and I talked a lot. We did 2 episodes. I don't think you've listened to either of them yet. So we talked a lot about one person handling the finances and kind of how to balance it out in a marriage, and talked a lot about our strategy and what's worked for us. Our situation's a little different. We got married relatively young based on today's standards. I was 25 and she was 24, which I guess isn't that young, but seems young by today's norms, I guess, a little bit. So what are your feelings about one person handling all the finances? Because you know as well as I do, we meet a lot of people in the course of our business advising individuals, couples, and families, where you'll have a couple and one person, stereotypically it's the female, the wife doesn't know anything about the money and the finances. How do you feel about that? Not so much what's going on in your household, which I want to get to, but how do you feel about that where, excuse me, where one person handles all the finances and the other person is in the dark?
I definitely don't think that's a good idea. And it comes down to the lack of communication. Because being a couple, you need to communicate. You need to be able to rely on each other for joint decisions, big decisions. And if one person is completely in the dark, they don't have the information available to them to make a good decision. So they could have different feelings, or they could want different things, but without the communication from the other person or the knowledge of what they have, they can't make any kind of decision.
But does it surprise you where you still see an awful lot of wives are in the dark? And it's not because the husbands necessarily want them to be in the dark. It's mostly just willful. Joelle and I talked about this. You know, divide and conquer. There's things that she largely handles in our household, and there's things that I'm largely responsible for. And we do have checks and balances. But does it surprise you how many women are intentionally in the dark? Does that surprise you how often that occurs?
It does, and I know you keep saying women, but there's also men in that situation. And I think it boils down to they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to be responsible for it. They don't want to be responsible if something goes wrong and have that fall on their back. I definitely think it's an intentional choice. I don't think it's a good choice, though.
It's definitely not a good choice. I agree 100%. And we've seen, and I've seen because I've been in the business longer than you have, lots of instances where this catches up in a number of ways, including if there's a health crisis, an emergency, or a passing, that then you not only are mourning the loss of a loved one and a life partner, but then there's the financial pressure of not knowing where money is, how much there is, where it comes from, why it's positioned where it is, and it really makes for a stressful, pressure-packed situation.
Right, and if they don't have any idea on the assets, they probably don't have any idea on the budget or any of their expenses, so they have no idea of how it comes together and really how to handle anything after somebody passes or something happens like that.
Yeah, and it's I find it sad to see.
Yeah.
And what we talked about, what Joelle and I talked about with our checks and balances in our house, we're not suggesting that both parties need to know everything and do everything side by side every single day, paying the bills together and tracking investments together. It doesn't need to be that.
Right.
But there has to be a way that there's a baseline of communication. I love that word that you used. So that there's an awareness, a basic understanding of how things are structured, where the money is, and just a foundational understanding goes a long, long way. So that's great. And I should have done this. I'm going out of order, so bear with me, Lindy. We talked about big purchases. Mm-hmm. Should you consult one another before making big purchases? How do you guys do that with you and DJ as an example? How does that work?
It's a little bit different on our side because we do separate all of our money.
Okay.
So if it is a joint purchase, a big joint purchase, then yeah, we're going to discuss it because we both have to contribute to that big purchase. We have to. Mm-hmm. If one of us wants to get something for ourselves that's a bigger purchase, there's times when we consult with each other, but other times when we don't because we don't really share the assets.
Okay. So, as you know, Joelle and I, all of our money goes into one pot. Everything is joint. There's no separate checking accounts, no separate pools of money. And so that's how we've always structured things over the 23 years of marriage in August of this year. So you guys do things differently. So you have your checking account, savings account, you have your money.
Yep.
And then he has his, and money that you earn goes into your account.
Yep.
And there isn't a common joint account.
No.
Which is, I think, seems to me more popular, I guess is the right word, where a couple have, he has his account, she has her account, but then there's also a joint account. It's the his, hers, and ours model. So you keep things separate, and with that comes a lot of independence so that if you want to purchase something, even a large ticket item, you have the freedom. What works within your relationship is it's your money, mm-hmm. and you can make the buying decision. But is it fair to say a lot of times with bigger ticket items that it's going to be jointly because you guys are going to go into it together?
Yeah.
So what's an example? What would be a hypothetical or even a real life example of a big ticket item that you might buy or DJ may buy that there would not be much communication because either you or he are using your own money and are going to make the decision and spend the money?
So a big purchase from a couple years ago, I had bought we hunt, so I bought a new tree stand. And a tree stand is a couple $100.
Okay.
And it's for me only. He's not going to be using it at all. And I made the decision. I sort of consulted him just for his opinion on which one I should get, but I didn't check with him to see if it was okay. Or to see what he thought about me getting a new one. He just trusts me that I needed a new one and I have the money and we're good to go.
So big ticket item in a household is a car, vehicles.
Yeah.
So are they done individually or are they done within the joint construct where you guys work out a budget and then decide how much is going to be contributed? Walk me through that.
Again, that was pretty separate. When he wants a new truck, or I got a new truck a couple years ago, I told him I wanted to get a new truck. He's like, okay. And we go to the car dealership and we looked together. He knows that I pay that myself, so I basically work out the budget myself, what I feel comfortable paying. And then he helps me make the decision because it's more the research area. King.
Yeah, right.
So he helps me make the decision, and then he's a great negotiator. So I love to bring him to stuff like that because he helps me negotiate prices. But the decision was completely mine when it came down to it because it's my money that's paying for it.
Okay. And if you were looking to do something, stick with the vehicle front, and I believe this is hypothetical, I don't think this has happened, but just walk me through how you would think about it, is if you were you said, all right, here's what I want to do vehicle-wise, and he disagreed. I'm talking more price-wise, not an SUV versus sedan or anything like that, but price-wise.